Radio Rahim stateside once again with Eddie Hearn. And there was something that you noticed about me that made you think I was a local in England. It was the excitement about boxing and the passion, I'm sure. No one can argue with that. You having done, I would say, certainly the most in trying to bridge that gap here and bring that kind of fan excitement to America and the dollars to the UK, vice versa. What has you in this last, I don't know, it's only been 6 months or so, right?
6 months. Yeah.
6 months experience. That's the difference between these two markets. How do we get that kind of enthusiasm for boxing here in America?
That's a good question. And as Bob said up there, that apparently I'm a great promoter, but I don't know dick about boxing in the US. He's probably right. I mean, I'm coming here as a very successful promoter to try and change the game in the States. I'm just a Brit who's coming over trying to learn. And it will take time. One of the things I've found, it might sound simple now, is that this is a big place. And what works in one city won't work in another city. And you've got to understand the market, understand the people. The key to being a great promoter is to understand the consumer, understand the customer. That's what we've got. And great sport appeals to anyone. But event experience, build-up and hype is something completely different. So one thing that I've learned here is not a lot of people know about who's on a card. In fact, not a lot of people know who the fighters are. In fact, not a lot of people know what the schedule is. In fact, not a lot of people know who's even fighting outside of maybe one you're going to watch or the main event. And a good example of that was when we went to Kansas, right? Wichita. That was an interesting place to try, where we sold, I don't know, 4,500 tickets, and Nico Hernandez boxed in an 8-rounder, the local like standout guy, and half the audience went home with the co-main event and the main event to come. It was Clarissa Shields and then it was Jarrell Miller. And I was like, wow, you paid your money. And I don't even think they knew that Clarissa Shields and Jarrell Miller were to come. I actually wanted to go at people leaving going, whoa, where are you going? And I was looking around and people going, oh, Nico's box, we're off now. That's the end of the night. So no. So it's about education. It's about trying to transcend the passion, but it's mostly about what I said about what works in New York don't necessarily work in LA, and what works in LA might not work in Philly. And I've been so blessed to promote, I don't know, 6 shows so far, something like that. Chicago, Boston, New York, LA coming up next week, Kansas, Philadelphia, and just learning, Rahim. You know, like it's in England. What works in London works in Manchester. You know, we've got a very successful model to promote fights. We have a big brand name. You know, what we don't have in the US yet is who is Matchroom? Who is Eddie Hearn? In the UK, you know, if it's a Matchroom show or it's an Eddie Hearn show, we're going anyway. We want a good card, but we're going because we know that's quality. So part of our job is to raise the profile, not just of our fighters, but even my profile and Matchroom and the brand's profile, to know that it represents the same that it represents in the UK, which is quality, which is value for money, which is excitement, which is sexy, which is a night out, which is just a great event of world-class sport.
Which is boxing.
Exactly. But how do you know, I see so many big fights, big names that aren't moving the needle at the gate, not just mine, but like, you know, again, this is a good example on Friday. So it's a lot of work to do, and I don't know the answers, but I'm going to do everything I can to try and find them. It's not a 6-month job, you know what I mean? But I feel that within the 6 months that we've been running, I understand things a lot more. It's an amazing experience of learning. You know, next week, 2 weeks on Friday, we have our show at the Forum. Rung Visai against Estrada, Dehenny against Roman Unification, Jesse Vargas against Soto, Anthony Sims, Scott Quigg. It's a monster card. And we're going to have 5,000 or 6,000. It's a Friday night. But I'm here in LA this week and I'm just trying to learn, you know, how we penetrate in the Hispanic market. You know, there's a big Thai community in LA. Well, Rung Visai is from Thailand. How do we penetrate that? Go and see the embassy, try and beat it's a big job. And you can't always cover all bases, but you've got to find out what works. But ultimately, you've got to, word of mouth is a big thing. Our show in Philly was probably the first show that I did where I left and I went, you know what? It was a fucking great night. And I know that everyone was in there will be back. next time. We done 5,000 tickets.
And Philly has that rich history.
Exactly.
Because,
so I know that and that's what we have to do. We have to establish ourselves and get the credibility in certain fight markets. And I really feel that in Philly now, Matchroom and us could go back and go, remember last time? This one's even bigger. 5 turns to 7. 7 turns to 9. You know, next thing you're selling out arenas there, and that's what I believe will happen. But you've got to get the credibility and a footprint in these different markets.
Thank you, Eddie, for the time.
Cheers.
Radio Rahim with Eddie Hearn.